Hi, this is Derek Tsai from learnbyblogging.com. Today I want to do a book review on this book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. This is the book that I'm about to review. A very thick one, I must say. Right here. The book sheds some light about what makes people tick. Makes judgment and decisions. Too many concepts were presented here and require a lot of time relating to our current life. I listened to the audio book twice. The first time was more than a year ago, and the second time that I read this time wasn't really sufficient for me to understand for this review. So I had to go back and read the book again. By the way, the Kindle version of this book is very inexpensive, only $3. What a bargain for a very thick book, a very rich book like this one. My key takeaway from this book is that number one, thinking statistically is really hard and maybe the way to avoid falling trap into our system 1. So the book will go into more detail of what system 1 and 2 is. And I'll discuss about that a little bit later. Number 2 is that planning fallacy really hit home for my career and for my in my experience working in the tech industry. People really think too optimistically. So I like the remedy that he suggests of by applying a past statistics and adjust from there. So if you have, based on the statistic or the past history, you can reapply to your current situation and adjust your schedule accordingly. Number 3 that I take away is that the use of pre-mortem, this is in the part 3 of the book, to counter the group think is very brilliant. I think is a great way to think about one's big personal decision. By asking yourself, imagine X number of years into the future, you have failed. Now write a brief history of your failure. Wow, this is very, very powerful. I wish I've done that in a lot of my decision. Number 4 is what you see is what you get. Or what you see is all there is. WYSIATI lies in the basic theme of system 1. We can only decide based on what we perceive at the moment, mostly from our intuition or the system 1. Now there are 2 systems and 2 cells in each one of us. Part 1 goes into the system 1 and system 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, and very little effort and voluntary control. And system 2 is slow, effortful, attentive, deliberate. Articulates judgments, including mental activities, makes choices, but if often endorses or rationalizes ideas and feelings that were generated by system 1. So it's more like reinforcing your intuition. So priming effect is due to system 1. Whatever is easier, like what is easier to pronounce or rhyme, due to the cognitive ease. So explaining away the coincidence like the black swan effect event or the halo effect, or jumping to conclusion is what system 1 is good at and is helped by system 2. System 2 plays an apologist role for the emotions of system 1. Then a critic of these emotions. It's more of an endorser rather than an enforcer. So, it's very rich idea. And part 2, talk about the heuristics versus thinking statistically. System 1 lacks thinking statistically. So small samples do lend to statistical meaningful conclusion. We often fooled by small samples. For example, it's happened once or twice. If a plane crash, that you always feel the plane is not safe. So we always fool by small samples. But also we are subject to anchoring for something that we have no reference of, like what is the tallest redwood tree taller than 1,200 feet? What is your best guess? The question is the tallest redwood tree taller than 1,200 feet? So 1,200 feet is the anchor effect. And what's your best guess? The availability, and people always fall into that anchor effect. And the availability bias make us think that they are frequent, things are more frequent, and if we can recall, most instances like consecutive plane crashes that I just talked about, those are the availability bias. And the availability cascade is attributed to the limitation of mind to deal with small risk. We either ignore them altogether or give them far too much weight due to the viral news spreading, things that you saw in TV. The sins of representativeness, excessive willingness to predict the occurrences of unlikely, very low base rate event. So there's a lot of mumbo jumbo here, but if you read the book, you understand. So both system 1 and 2 may be guilty of incorrect intuitive judgment due to ignorances or laziness. And the second sin is that insensitive to the quality of evidence. We leverage Bayesian statistics and anchor your judgment on the probability of an outcome in a plausible base rate and question the diagnosticability of your evidence. So what unfortunately, it's a very long word, pretty heavy concept here. Conjunction fallacy is in the Linda example that you have to read a book to understand or read a Wikipedia. Highlights the laziness of system 2 that breaks the statistical logic. Less is more. It's a more plausible story that appeals to the system 1. So people often don't learn things from the statistics, especially the base rate, until they can derive a causal interpretation on them. So this is where the Bayesian statistic is important. Also, grasping the concept of regression to the mean is very difficult because the insistent demand for casual interpretation of system 1. So system 1 always needs to have explanation, even though it could be just a random event. Okay. Part 3, it describes the limitation of our mind and overconfidence of what we believe we know. So hindsight bias leads observer to assess the quality of decision not by whether the process was sound, but by whether the outcome was good or bad. Outcome bias is when the outcome was bad, the agents get blamed for not seeing the handwriting, and illusion of validity is acting like as if each one of a specific prediction were valid. For example, the author predicted the soldier's future performance when he was at an army doctor and fund manager in the finance. Okay, we always think that our prediction was valid. So experts are often inferior to algorithm because the experts try to be clever and consider complex combination of features in making their prediction, and humans are inconsistent in making a summary judgment of complex information. So only trust those with the two basic conditions for acquiring a skill: an environment that is sufficiently regular to be predictable, an opportunity to learn these irregularity through prolonged practices and feedback. Okay, so here's how you judge an expert. Expert need to have making those judgment all the time. So two basic conditions: has environment that's sufficiently regular, something that happens day in and day out, and opportunity to learn those regularity through prolonged practice and feedback. So if something doesn't happen very often, don't trust the expert. If a person who's making the judgment does not always get the feedback, for example, a psychiatrist, or they don't always get feedback from how good their treatments are, you cannot judge them to be expert. So that's very good takeaway on how you judge an expert. And then we tend to the planning fallacy. I'll just talk about it describes the plans and forecasts unrealistically close to the best case scenario and could be improved by consulting the statistics of the similar cases. So try to use past cases, trying to extrapolate from the past based on statistics. And optimistic bias is what drives entrepreneur that drives our economy. So use a pre-mortem procedure when a group almost come to the important decision but has not formally committed itself. What you do is gather a group of people knowledgeable about the decision and ask, imagine we are about a year into the future and we implement a plan as now exists. The outcome was a disaster. Please take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to write a brief history of that disaster. So it's almost like writing a post-mortem, right, in the future sense. So pre-mortem legitimizes the doubts, but suppressing the healthy amount of doubts, but not suppressing the healthy amount of doubts and paranoia. Okay, so that's part 3. Part 4, challenge the rationality assumption in a standard economics. The author debunked a Bernoulli utility theory by arguing that it doesn't take the reference point into account. So if you are starting from $4 million net worth to $2 million versus from $1 million to $2 million, they should have a different utility curve. But the Bernoulli principle says, yeah, you should have the same utility curve. So that is what is wrong with that particular theory. So a person become risk-seeking when all options are bad. So this is the basis for the author's prospect theory. If everything to lose, they tend to take a lot more risk versus a person who have more to gain, less to gain. They will probably just take the sure thing, do the sure thing, and take less risk. So there's an endowment effect that explains why you tend to value more of what you own and less of what others own, because of different reference point. The loss looms larger than gain for yourself, unlike a trader. So everything you own seems worth a lot more to you than to other people. And human nature. The possibility effect places a very heavy weight between 0 and 5% probability. And the certainty effect places a heavy weight between 95% and 100%. So going from 0 to 5% is a huge jump in the probability, in the weight of how people make decisions. And going from 95% to 100%, the sure thing, also have a very big jump. And in the author's fourfold patterns, people tend to be risk averse when there's a high probability of gain and no probability of loss, like insurance. So but more risk-seeking when there's a high probability of loss and no probability of gain, like a lottery. So people tend to take risks when there's a very high probability of loss and everything to lose, you take a chance. And by a very low probability of gain, like a lottery tickets, people like to seek risk. So it's very interesting how you put this into 4 quadrants and really explain human nature very well. And people tend to overestimate the probability of the rare events and outweight their probability. So the emotion of regret is more felt to an outcome that's produced by an action than to the same outcome when it's produced by inaction. So if you do something and then you screw up, It tends to be more regret than you don't do anything, and you lose something. You didn't gain anything. That seems to be less. The former one seems to have more regret for a person. So by anticipating to overcome that, you should anticipate a regret before that decision, and you can minimize that. Part 5 describes the two selves: the experiencing self and the remembering self. When it comes to pain, people observe the peak end rules. The worst pain and the pain at the end really dominate. So that's called duration neglect. The duration, the procedure that no effect whatsoever on the rating of the total pain. So people tend to forget during the process, the duration. People only pick up the worst case and at the end. So pain is preferred to be short and pleasure to be long. But our memory, a function of system 1, has evolved to remember the peak of the pain and the pleasure, or pleasure, and at its end, but neglects what's in the middle, the duration. So we have experiencing self and then remembering self, and that came from two different systems. Since we care more, as we demonstrated in the amnesia vacation. If you would take people would not even want to take a vacation if their memory get wiped out at the end. There's less willingness to go take those vacation. Kind of makes sense because when you come back from vacation, all you have is memory, and if you don't have that, what good is that? So anyway, so this book goes into very great details, analysis of the human nature, and it's a great book. If you have enough patience and a lot of interest in this, how human mind work, this is explain a lot why we do things kind of contradictory at times. So a great book. I definitely recommend it. And for $3 in Kindle books, I think it's well worth it. By all means, very fun read. A little bit long, but worth the read. And that's all I have. Thank you for watching and listening to my review. If you enjoy it, please subscribe to my channel and come to learnmyblogging.com. Thank you for watching. Bye now.